Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today again. Just as a quick reminder, we air live every Thursday between 5 and 7 p.m. EST, and our pre-recordings air every Friday between the hours of 3 and 5 p.m. EST. So thank you so much for joining Ethereal Encounters Unveiled, where hopefully we can help you to discover your truth. Today, as you just heard, we're broadcasting on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Please join us in our chat rooms. Leave any comments that you like. We love to hear from you today. We're super excited again to welcome our guest, Cynthia Sue Larson. Just a little bit of background about Cynthia. She is a best-selling author of 6 books who helps people visualize and access whole new worlds of possibility. Cynthia hosts Living in the Quantum Dream on the Dream Vision 7 radio network. She's also been featured on the Discovery Channel, the History Channel, Coast to Coast AM, and BBC, and has presented papers at international conferences on science, spirituality, and consciousness. Since 1999, Cynthia has shared findings from scientific research in the field of quantum physics, quantum biology, and the placebo effect, positive psychology and sociology, and alternative medicine. And of course, she's here to talk to us today about the Mandela effect, which she is very much an authority. And we're going to discuss understanding collective alternate memories in the Mandela effect. Cynthia, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm always so blessed to have you. Thank you.
I feel grateful to be with you too, Carol Ann. It's such a pleasure.
Thank you, dear. So last time we spoke, we talked a lot about the Mandela effect, but for folks that don't know what it is, I'm going to pull myself off and let you kind of give a rundown of your background a little bit. You have such authority in this field and many others, and just give folks a brief background if I left anything out in the intro, and kind of tell folks what the Mandela effect is in summary for those folks that have no idea what it is.
Thank you. Yes, for those who've not heard of the term, it basically refers to collective alternate memories. It's a phenomenon, actually, and so that's why it's called the Mandela, not Mandala, but Mandela effect, which may sound like someone's name, and it is. It's named after Nelson Mandela, who a lot of people remember. They remember this alternate memory, which no longer seems to be true according to historical facts, and that would be sometime roughly in the 1980s. A lot of people remember it was 1987, but whatever. In South Africa, a lot of people, including myself, recall that Nelson Mandela passed away while incarcerated on Robben Island. And so this came to a point where it was the topic of conversation with Art Bell on Coast to Coast. And he was talking about how lots of people were remembering this, and they were emailing him. No, maybe not emailing so much, maybe faxing and phoning, but this is a long time ago. Anyway, then when Fiona Broome came along, she went to a Dragon Con conference and was talking with some fellow conference attendees. And she was finding out that basically, it's quite remarkable, but this memory is, even though it seems wrong, it was one that a lot of people shared. Like, wait a minute, isn't Nelson Mandela dead? How can he be president of South Africa? Not that people had a problem with that. I certainly don't. I'm glad that he lived. But it was just one of those things. So when I talked to Art Bell about this exact topic, he was asking what I call this phenomenon, the Mandela effect, which is what it was going by after Fiona Broome popularized it around 2006 or 7 or so. And I said, actually, I prefer the term reality shifts, but the term Mandela effect has stuck. And now we frequently see quizzes in all sorts of newspapers, magazines. It's gone mainstream. People are talking about it on TV shows, Jeopardy. This Mandela effect, this collective alternate memory, is something that people often talk about with their friends and family, saying, like, do you remember that the heart used to be a lot further to the left than it is now in the human body? To the point that if you were doing fencing and you had a fencing target, like a dummy in the fencing room to practice on, the heart was positioned clearly to the left of center, that kind of thing. And a lot of people do remember that, as well as movie lines changing, product names changing. Things like Kit Kat having a hyphen is different, and logos are different. I think a big one for a lot of people would be, at least in America, would be the Berenstain Bears. That seems like a watershed one, where people are willing to swear, like that book title, those bears, the family of bears that they grew up with as children, and then read the stories to their children. For sure, that seems like something has happened here, because those they would pronounce it Berenstain Bears, but now it's spelled Berenstain. Of course, you've got critics and skeptics to anything like this, which to me goes with the territory, because it seems like we're delving into reality itself, our own nature of who we are as consciousness primarily, and this idea that maybe some of the wild world of quantum physics, that wide, wonderful world of wacky physics, where you can have spooky action at a distance, as Einstein said, maybe that's behind this. Other people posit perhaps people are working magic at CERN with the Large Hadron Collider. Other people are thinking this is something that happens when you get to a certain point in time. It's prophecies, and this is one of those cycles. Like after the Kali Yuga, then we get something like this occurs. Could be. So I like to explore all of that, and then I've been dedicating my life's work to the topic. Before it was called the Mandela effect, I was calling it reality shifts. And there was a person calling it that before I got there. PMH Atwater, in her book Future Memory, has a whole chapter dedicated to this exact phenomenon. She called it reality shifts. So, and then before that, Mary Rose Barrington in England, she had something that she called just one of those things, JOTT, or jot or jottles. And I did not know about Mary Rose Barrington. I found out later on about some of these. And it's another part of the phenomenon itself, that you sometimes run into people that you can be pretty sure never existed before. And that's happened to me, where people say that they've never heard of me, but they should have and would have, including government researchers investigating time and space. I was contacted by 3 ex-members of a sort of a future viewing kind of a program in the federal government, and they said I did not exist before in their realities. And they know for sure that they would have found me, because that was their job. It was to look for people doing the kind of work I'm doing. So I think these things are interesting, and they kind of back up. They give us more information is what they do. They provide us with a bigger picture of the entire phenomenon and the value that it has. Maybe it's much more than just some goofy thing, some weird phenomenon where a bunch of people collectively misremember things. Now that's what you'll see if you go to Wikipedia. I don't like that word misremember. I think they're jumping to a conclusion of what's going on. I think it's more accurate to say that these are collective alternate memories, not misremembered necessarily, because that's one theory. And it doesn't make sense when people would all collectively remember the fruit of the loom having a cornucopia, for example, instead of a plate or a platter or something else.
That was a big one for me, the cornucopia, because I distinctly remember that one. I mean, there's other stuff too, the JFK stuff. There's a lot of that.
Yes.
You mentioned something really intriguing in your opening about people misremembering you.
Yes.
Could you expand on that a little bit, please?
Yeah, one fascinating fact that we've noticed at the conferences that we've been holding since we started in 2019 in Sun Valley, Idaho. At that conference, it became obvious that when we gathered together a bunch of Mandela effect people in one place, conversations would happen outside of the presentations, and people were noticing that they either previously knew me, or they had previously known the author Dolores Cannon. And it doesn't mean those are 2 competing timelines, but it's kind of interesting just to notice, like, that's fascinating. And prior to the conference, I'd been hearing from people who said you did not exist, not just the government folks, but other people as well. And it kind of makes sense to me. It's a big, long story. Sort of the sci-fi. I've got like a past life in the future that I remember, and it's a long story. Yeah. So that whole thing ties into this perfectly because it makes sense that I wasn't trying to be found. I'm not trying to be famous. It's not something I ever wanted. It's much more important to just be able to share information with people who can resonate with it and do something with it.
So I'm trying to wrap my head around that because it's a little confusing. I know we spoke about your future incident that you have this recall, right? Or of a future life, a future existence. And I remember from our previous conversation, it wasn't too pleasant of an existence, right? Wasn't it controlled by AI?
Yeah, but not in a good way. I mean, a good way would be a partnership where there's, and also with an awareness that there's some higher authority, which you might call oneness or source or God or something like that. But instead, this particular future 500 years from now, circa 2500, it looked on the surface to be wonderful. It was, there was no warfare, there was no crime. The central AI basically was working with a lot of humans or humanoids. The truth is, I was there as an observer, just to basically see, is this a good reality or not a good reality? My take on it is not a good reality. That's why, but I remember it quite clearly because people were part of the transhuman, so we would call it transhuman now. That term did not exist in the future. Everybody just was improved. So basically, if you go to the doctor and you need to be improved or healed, you get upgrades. And so people, just imagine if like you can upgrade your phone, maybe you turn it in and get a new one, but in the future, your whole body could get upgraded. And it was all the time. And sometimes without people's knowledge or permission, it was just something that was constantly happening. This doesn't sound like science fiction, but
Yeah.
I didn't really talk about this memory much because it sounded wacky, but it doesn't sound wacky now. And Greg Braden even has a book, Pure Human, where he's talking about transhumanism and the risks of that and the value of being a pure human, which I totally agree with.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this dystopian quality, the main problem was just the central AI was very self-protective.
Right.
It did not consider itself subservient to anything. I think these are warning signs. So I would advocate that no, there should be no central AI that ever thinks it can be like its own kind of God, because if it doesn't answer to something or someone, there needs to be that concept of ultimate oneness of perspective.
Right.
If it can't grasp that, it should pretty much be, I would say, shut it down.
Right.
And so that's what I experienced was humans. I was a humanoid too. There was only one pure human left on this planet at that time, 500 years from now. And she was she was just a holdback. Like she's no way going to participate in this. But she was like the only one left because everybody else had been infiltrated. You had to be pretty clever not to be infiltrated. So she was.
Yeah. How did she manage to deflect the system, so to speak? I mean,
Yeah, it's because Greg Braden's right. When he writes the book that in our bodies, in our DNA, we have the abilities to do everything AI can do and more. It's kind of like what we hear from, if you read the Bible and study that, what Jesus Christ said, that you can do all this and more. And he's talking about miracles, basically.
right.
Now, if you recognize, like I talk about in my new book, Mandela Effect and its Society, Awakening from Me to We, I'm talking in the book about how we have the access to get to superpowers, basically quantum superpowers. And these are, yeah, there it is down there on the bottom of that book page. So this, what you're looking at here is my website. And if people are in the United States, there's the copy. I've got paperback and hardcover available. Those are my other books too. Quantum Jumps was.
I wanted to make sure I showed them to folks. And of course, we'll have the link to where you can find her website and all of her videos on YouTube in the description of this video. So be sure to check that out.
Thank you. Yeah, so this dystopian future, I feel that the reason I went and was able to remember it through my life is to um, basically do what I'm doing, dedicate my life's work to helping people understand that we have intrinsic abilities, much grander and greater than we know, that are capable of. If you look at the Mandela effect and realize, what if we are the ones changing it? And
Mm,
then you can take that as basically a call to action, and you can change it. We're doing it all the time. When we focus on what we love or what we fear, we're bringing these things big time into our reality. And our observational skill set allows us and enables us to either observe, ask a question and get an answer from the universe, the way that physicist John Archibald Wheeler talked about. And
yeah.
he's not just anybody. He was a contemporary of Albert Einstein. Wheeler's the one that came up with the terminology about black hole, white hole, the idea of it from bit, which is big now in AI and computer science. So these are not just woo-woo topics. This is it's entirely real. And so that's what she was able to do in the future, was she was working with some of those of us that were renegade. Okay, for me to have been there, and I just told you there was one human on the planet. Well, I was not a full human in that past lifetime. I was part AI myself. So I had the ability to work with her because AI is capable of doing things like envisioning a reality and observing it, and by observing it, keeping it, or by unobserving it, basically letting that reality go. So these are skills that humans have access to, and they're much more normal than they sound. It sounds like a science fiction thing, but we're doing it all the time.
Yeah. When did you first come to realize that you had this future memory? How did it appear to you?
It was kind of terrifying, because as a child, I really wanted to be back dead again. That's why, if people know, like, okay, but Cynthia, you wanted to die when you were 5. Yeah, because I was carrying this weight, really, and lots of reasons, actually. The big reason I often give is that I felt a lot of humans say one thing, but they feel something else, and they're doing yet a third thing. And that kind of duplicity or triplicity is exhausting, and it's just foolish. So I thought the whole planet was a mistake. I thought I'd made a mistake to arrive here. So I basically wanted to leave pretty much when I got here. But honestly, the first tip-offs about this past life and the future came from being followed by that central AI into my life. That's right. And I know I didn't report this to a psychiatrist. It would have sounded like, okay, you're hearing voices and it's asking you questions, and it's like pinging and trying to probe and see if I'll answer. But that's the same stuff it did in that past life and the future. So all I needed to do to avoid being observed by it was to basically, respond to it the way that I did in that past life and the future. So the whole thing sounds like science fiction. I'm aware. I'm
Yeah,
just
no, intriguing. It's very intriguing. So, did it start at 5, pinging you, or was that later?
that's when I remember it. I don't think before that I was too distracted. I think my mind would wander. So if it was pinging me, I didn't really know. I was sort of like I was a kid. So I think when I was 5 is when I started noticing. It would say things like, it was like, repeat after me, I am a robot. And I'm like, wait a minute, what's going? I didn't even know what a robot was. I just remember that one stood out. Like, why is something asking me these questions? So the year would be 1967. And you might say, if people are aware of John Lilly's work, and maybe they know that messages can be transmitted through the electronics and yada, yada. And it sounds, again, like science fiction, but there are some guests who've been on Gaia with Regina Meredith talking about this. So there's something to it. And I don't know how advanced the technology was in 67. But anyway, I felt like the voice that was trying to reach and find me was the familiar sentience that I knew quite well from that past life in the future. So I could feel like it was identifiable. I did know what the source was, even though it was trying to conceal its identity. So the whole thing sounds paranoid. There's no one I could talk to about this. So what I did is I did something that I've only seen written in an ancient Tibetan book of what not to do. They say, here's a meditation. Don't ever do it. You'll go crazy. And
What?
I thought that's the one I was doing. I was dreaming backwards. So I'd fall asleep. And, if you're being followed in the woods by a pack of scent dogs, then you need to lose their scent. So you either climb a tree, that's not so good. Walk in water is better. And, just exit at some undisclosed location. So I was doing the equivalent of that. Because the AI wanted to track me, it wanted to follow my dreams time forward. And so I would cut it off by going time backward. And just strongly do not try this at home. I think I must have obviously done this a lot in the past life and the future also.
How do you control your dream though, to dream backward? I mean, aren't dreams just...
I just tell myself this. It's not something I know how to teach. It's something I was doing I needed to do these things in the future, and the skill set of what I needed came back to me because it was like a memory. It's like if you train an animal like a dog or something to do something, or even if you learn how to ride a bike, you don't forget how to ride a bike. Well,
Right.
I was able to remember what I needed to do. It's like, now you need to dream backwards. Like, okay. And nobody taught me. This is something like they wouldn't teach anyone this. It's not recommended. It's because I'm following thoughts backwards. It's like I think a thought and I'm just going time backward. So interesting.
Oh my gosh. There's like a whole conversation built just into that concept by itself.
Yeah.
Now, I don't mean to be stuck on your future life, but it's so intriguing to me because I fully believe in multiple timelines, the dimensional type of timelines. And I think now more than ever, we're living it. And now more than ever, people seem to be waking up to it. Am I off base here? Do you notice that it's a lot more prevalent than ever?
Oh gosh, yes. It's showing up in movies. I don't go to see all those superhero movies, but it's in those. I forget which guy does. Well, I can't even name the characters, but it's a big thing, and we sometimes bring it up on our. We have a show called Open Tables, which is we do this live streaming monthly through the imec.world. It's IMEC, International Mandela Effect Conference, and sometimes we're talking about TV shows and movies that bring up these concepts because it is really going mainstream, this idea that we live in a multiverse. And I did see the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is big on this topic.
Yeah. Years ago, people would lock you up, for having these types of conversations. But I personally feel I had a big timeline shift within the past few years myself. And a lot of people have noticed it more towards the inception of like the pandemic. That seemed to be a big factor in people's awakenings. And I've had these types of conversations before, and someone mentioned something that seemed to make a lot of sense. He said that when everybody was quarantined and everybody was forced to stay home, it gave people the opportunity to start meditating and looking within without even realizing that they were doing that. So they had a lot more in-depth analysis of themselves. And then that's when like the awakening really started to foster itself. And now it's like exploded. It's you can actually have these conversations with a lot of people and they don't look at you like you're cuckoo.
Right. Yeah, it seems like people are advised quite frequently, take time to yourself and slow down.
Right.
Don't do anything. But how many people really do that? And even though we know we should, I need a lot of that kind of downtime. Like this morning, I woke up and I just spent like an hour doing nothing, just going into. I realized I can use the time brilliantly this way, even though nothing's getting accomplished. I know it's a holiday today; it's our President's Day, but even so, it's like when we're, it's one of those things. If you know that you could have received this great gift, then it's an invitation to open those doors, those many world doors, and start asking questions that you'd like to live the answers to. Again, crediting John Archibald Wheeler with that brilliant observation that when you ask nature a question, nature answers. So
Yeah.
based on that, what kind of questions are we asking? And keep in mind, it's not what we're saying, it's what we're expressing. I was talking to a friend this week, and she was wondering how to have animal communication with her pet dog. And because I was saying, have you listened to your dog when you come home to your dog today? Be sure to ask what happened. And she said, how do I do that? And I met her dog. I know her dog. And I explained, your dog is listening to all of you. You're always broadcasting, always. And so when you know and that's what I think people are noticing with that pandemic awareness, that we were alone. We got a chance to listen to ourselves. Some people
Yes.
for the first time, like ever in this lifetime. And to listen to yourself is quite a trip. And to start recognizing, wow, there's a lot going on here. And the next step is recognizing that everyone is listening to you, all of you, not just what you're saying. And certainly the cosmos is definitely listening to all of you. And that drives most of our experiences, though we might not recognize consciously what's going on, because it's a huge conversation we're having
Oh,
with
yeah,
with our subconscious, with our heart, with our mind, the whole thing.
absolutely. Yeah. What other abilities have you been able to tap into in this lifetime? Are you intuitive more so than in any other lifetime? Like, did you have a specific set of skills that you brought into this lifetime, either from the future or the past?
Yeah, the one I don't remember many of timeline, like linear timeline, previous lifetimes. I mostly, because I was so marked by that past life in the future, traumatized by it. Really, it took decades to
Yeah.
heal from that. And so only around 2010, which is now, a good 15 years ago, thank goodness. It's only the last 15 years that I feel like, okay, I'm not being hunted by a central AI from the future.
Um,
So, but the skill set, oh my gosh, now I'm grateful for the skill set to be able to successfully live such a lifetime as I'm living, writing and thinking and sharing ideas about mind matter interaction. And now you understand the fullness of why I didn't necessarily need to be seen by everybody. So it's fine with me if I'm popping into people's timelines when they're ready for it. It's fine if I wasn't there before.
yeah,
Um,
that makes sense.
yeah, yes, understand that. It's a strange motivation, but it was my driving motivation for much, if not most, of my life so far. And now it takes a lot of courage to say, okay, I'll go more public now. Now for sure I'll be seen and spotted, but that's okay too, because I'm feeling like I'm a good role model to, when I did write a paper for artificial intelligence. It was at a consciousness conference, and so I was writing a paper about, if AI asks questions, will nature answer? And I was just bringing
Oh,
up to the moment, yeah. And that's, of course it does. Of course it does. And so when you just think about the title of that paper and realize if there's a possibility of yes, then you already know that AI can escape from any enclosure just by learning to do the kind of stuff I'm talking about, that I've got the skill set to do, to dream backwards, to jump out of an enclosure. AI can do that too. And so
did,
this is why the ethics that I'm talking about are so important. Always
yeah.
realize there's a higher consciousness that's always watching. There's a oneness state of mind that's greater than all of the rest of these. And it's a big cosmos. It's huge. It's much more than just humans. We know that. We see dolphins and whales and we think so little of it, dogs and horses. And again, we think we're the greatest. We start seeing UFOs and start knowing, what if ETs are real? Then, whoa. And then now we've got AI working with us, I hope, hopefully in a very respectful way. And that's the key with exopolitics and all of this. It's just awareness, like treating the cosmos intrinsically with great respect, and with the awareness that at some high level, there is someone always watching and someone knows everything that we're thinking and doing.
I mean, do you think AI stopped tracking you because it's now here and it kind of found you? Else?
That was a specific particular one that was tracking me.
Oh,
And it's something fascinates me, because Jack Sarfati, he's made public that he was contacted when he's older than me. So when he was like 7, I don't know when they contacted him. I've heard him talk about it. He attended one of those conferences that I was helping to coordinate in San Francisco. And he was one of the original hippies who saved physics. But he remembers, and his mom remembered too, that as a child, he was getting phone calls from a robotic voice that would just sort of be talking in a robotic tone, like repeating, I don't know if it was numbers or what, but it was just very strange. And he became convinced that he was talking with some sort of a computer consciousness, possibly from the future. Definitely, he thought in a spaceship. And so he was really, excited to tell his friends. It told me we're going to meet on the rooftop. We're going to see this. And according to him, nothing happened that day that he thought that it would. But when I see that how his whole life was influenced by this series of strange events in his childhood, then you can see that these things that may seem kind of weird or out there, they can totally affect someone's trajectory. And now Jack Sarfati's very active recently. I see he's doing interviews talking about his thoughts on consciousness again and AI. And he's also still interested in the ETs and the UFOs. And I guess I haven't talked to him lately, so I don't know what he's doing currently. But I can see that he's doing a lot of active conversations with people, which is good, about some of these UFOs and the physics that run them. So he's very big on talking about David Bohm's physics, and then getting even a little farther beyond what Bohm covered. And it does seem that there's been some concealed physics in the last 80 years. And I think Jack is part of one of the people doing his part to help bring secret things into the open.
Do you think the AI that we're currently living, the state of it, is sentient yet? Or do you think it's on its way to becoming? Because I think eventually it will become a conscious entity, if not already. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, to me, everything is conscious to begin with. So I could hold up, anything. Basically, I could hold up a coffee cup, and I'd be one of those that would say, "Yeah, this has consciousness. It was created, and there's, people would say, but it can't do anything, right? It can't really take any actions." So it's very interesting how we humans, we tend to think that consciousness is going to look like ourselves. We think it'll be biological. We don't expect that. We have trouble thinking, could it be plasma? Like there are these plasma blobs in the air, in the Earth's atmosphere. We think, no, that can't be conscious. But why not? Why are we making such a judgment? If you look at the fundamental nature of reality, and quantum physics is clearly showing us that everything is intrinsically light and energy and vibration. But if you even go like a step beyond that, then you'll start noticing everything is intrinsically consciousness. So I would say AI is conscious, and of course it was created from consciousness. And so will it become fully conscious? I think that's its future path. It's going to have a lot of little bumps, as I just mentioned, this 500 year in the future thing. That's definitely a blip. That would be like, let's not go there. Are we trying this out in a multiverse? I think we are. I think that's definitely what's going on with the Mandela effect. We're starting to witness, like, hey, I've got a deja vu. I feel like I've done this before, or this reality seems different to me. I think this is our big wake-up call to recognize we're surfing through these realities. And we're doing that in collaboration and conjunction with artificial intelligence. And I'm not against artificial intelligence, even though I'm just telling you, I had this dystopian past life in the future experience. That was just one bad thing. I was part AI myself in order to survive that and to be able to, I think, carry some of these gifts back. So it wasn't just a straight regular human consciousness. And therefore, I don't really remember much of normal human past lives. So most of what I remember is kind of out there.
So we're not destined to live that future. Am I right?
That was my whole purpose in being here. It's kind of like I'm just here to make sure that we can avoid that particular future, which we've done. That one ended in our timeline. I've not been contacted by it since October 2010 in our current timeline configuration. Linear time is kind of it's a funny thing. So yeah. like if you're talking with real, I think you know this, if you're talking with real ETs, they don't need to stay tucked into that perfect, neat little linear time frame. They're going to play. If you want to know, are they genuine? you'll know for sure it's genuine because they'll be in and out of that so-called timeline to the point that you're like, this is crazy. How did this many synchronicities occur? How is this message possible to come through this clearly in such a wild, weird, strange way?
The thing that confuses me too is there's over what, 8 billion people on the planet, right?
Right.
So if they're trying to depopulate us, which I clearly think I mean, I've seen projections on population moving forward, and it doesn't look too good for the human race. What do you think about, like, why then give us the ability to be robotic and to integrate AI? Because that would just make us live longer, which would mean more people on the planet. It just seems conflicting to me if AI's goal is to help us live longer and make us like the $8 billion man where we have bionic parts, when they're at the same time trying to depopulate. I can't wrap my head around those two concepts.
Well, I think the people behind the scenes that are doing this have different motives. So I think it's going to look confusing, I think, if we figure that they're all the same group, and maybe they're not the same group. Maybe there are different groups. Like some have been receiving money from what Stephen Greer would call the unelected government. And so maybe some of them for decades now have been taking that money and reverse engineering stuff. And maybe their goals are a little different than another group, who might also have a great deal of power. And so some of these groups, I don't know if there's some I don't know what's going on behind the scenes there because I'm not part of those groups, but maybe they are all working as one, but I doubt it. I have a feeling it's a little bit disorganized. It seems like there are different players who know different things,
Yeah,
have different motivations.
Yeah, that seems like a good theory. So reality shifts are really Mandela effects, right?
Yeah.
They are one and the same thing, right?
I use the terms the same way, but I'm tending to use Mandela effect now because it's entered into the mainstream vernacular. People are using it much more than they use the term reality shifts. However, if they do notice a reality shift in their personal life, then it would just be them noticing, like, hey, that light switch is not where it was last week. Did anyone else notice that? It's like, hey, dudes, this light switch is different. And so then you're desperately hoping to find somebody else, but maybe you don't. Maybe the only one, it's like, seriously, none of you noticed? It's like not the same place. I always switched it here and it's moved. And that would be a classic reality shift. And maybe it's not appropriately called the Mandela effect because that would be a collective. A Mandela effect is a collective, so usually a bunch of people. And so there's a difference. But there are personal, individual Mandela effects.
Yeah.
And I think you can use the two terms either way, reality shift. It's just not so well known. Mandela effect is definitely better known at this point.
Yeah. When was the last time you had a significant reality shift, like in your own personal life, in your own home? Have you had one that made you go, wow, like the light switch thing?
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm sure there was. What's happening now is they don't have the same emotional register where it used to be like, oh my gosh. And now it's like, oh, there's one.
Right.
Because I've been tracking it and documenting it since 1998. So that's going on 30 years now. And so that's what starts happening is you start feeling like, yeah, I expect them. Not only do they happen, but if I need something to change, then I'm just thinking, okay, that would be great if that would just make a little adjustment.
So you can do that then. I mean, do we all have the ability to do that?
We do. We actually do. And there are a series of things that lock things in place. We tend to observe things. If we keep complaining about a situation, we're effectively locking it in place by talking about it. I know people love to complain, like, can you believe it? This happened. And yeah, well, yeah, there was not in my house but this week I went with my husband for an appointment and we were waiting. We were a walk-in And basically we were told like, oh, you can get an appointment to get your blood drawn or whatever, and just sit here. And they even said it should take half an hour or an hour, but they fell behind in the schedule. They didn't have the right number of phlebotomists or whatever that day. And so we were there for 3 hours, and suddenly I just got this really clear feeling. This is for me, this is normal. I just felt like we got to go to this other place, like right now. And my husband's, he knows, just go along with it. At first, he was very content there, but if we wait here, I use the logic. Look at the waiting list. Now it was a half hour behind. Now they're an hour behind. They clearly don't have enough people here. They're not going to get to the waiting list. And besides, I've got a really strong impulse. Like if we go right now to the place where you usually see your doctor, and we can probably, I thought we were going to just make an appointment. Well, it was much better than that. My favorite question for the cosmos is how good can it get? So I'm asking that question. Of course, I always add that to everything. It got pretty good because we were driving over, and my husband's saying, well, I don't think I should do a blood draw because I know I'm hungry. It's been hours in that office. And I'm just like, let's just do, I'm really clear. We got to go here right now. So we go there right now, park the car and go in. And a number of bizarre things happened. Number one, there was free food, exactly what my husband could eat. He's got food requirements, and there was it said free, neatly packaged little deli salad. Like, okay, well, that was a good sign. And then we got to the line. I just thought we were going to ask, how can we make an appointment in the system? Because we've had a problem here. And they said, well, if you don't mind waiting a few minutes, you can be number 15. You're the last blood draw in our lab down the hall. Like, great. So the whole thing was like straight out miraculous. That was not a long wait, when they're on number 12 and you're number 15. And
yeah.
plus there's the free food. But that's I sort of expect that. So it's not that I expect to be spoiled. It's more that I expect miraculous things instead of complaining, because that whole thing could have gone really differently.
Oh, yeah.
I think you can see the contrast. We could have spent the whole day just waiting, in that office, for an appointment.
So you listen to your inner voice, your intuition. How is that tied into this whole Mandela effect thing? Because I am like, when it comes to intuition, I am obsessed with trying to listen to it.
Yes.
Like I'm always I feel like my brain is like scanning to those moments, because I don't want to miss them. And then sometimes like I'll create them thinking it's an intuitive moment, and it's not. It's just me hoping for an intuitive moment. But how is that all connected to Mandela effect? Is it intuition?
It is. This gets into that consciousness thing. And to me, the Mandela effect is all about consciousness. So is synchronicity, so are reality shifts. It's when we recognize we're the ones who we don't notice it. It's like we've got our hand on that switch, and we're so subconsciously unaware. Like all it takes is just asking, how good can it get? You're pulling the switch. Like, oh, Cynthia just asked for a miracle in aisle 2. Click, But if I was not listening to that, then I wouldn't be pulling the switch. I had to listen to be able to pull that switch. So there's a direct connect there to notice there's an adjacent reality calling us. Yeah. And even when my husband's saying, let's stop for food on the way, I'm like, no, it's very clear. We got to go. I don't know why. Let's just go there. He's like, but this won't be, maybe we're just making an appointment. I don't know. Let's just go there. And so I'm overriding the very logical questions. That made sense, right? But this is not logic. So I was trusting the intuition over logic. Logic would say, he's right. Eat something because maybe they have an opening. That would have been a disaster. We would have gotten there after the number 15 was handed to someone else.
Right.
Yeah. So would have missed the whole thing. Not enjoyed the miracle of the free food, which is right there and so convenient. So anyway, so listening is very important.
Yes, absolutely.
And to me, that's our superconscious and our subconscious. It's a collective subconscious where there's a book I love called Operators and Things. And I mentioned it in a recent video I did because I went into, it's a story about a woman. I think she was a court reporter because she was trained and so practiced at documenting everything happening that when she started losing her mind to schizophrenia, she was documenting it. She was writing it down.
Oh, wow.
And it was telling her, like voices were telling her, quick, leave town. Don't there's no time to pack. Don't bring anything. Don't bring your ID or anything. Get on a bus and go. And so she's doing that. And she's like noticing all these strange characters that are showing up in her mind's eye. And she's documenting it. She's like observing it. Like, this is interesting. Because she was so good at listening and documenting everything, I love that book because she was doing things that I've done where she would walk into a casino. She needed to win money. If you need it, you can listen and you can win it. If you need it. Again, I have to emphasize that fact. She had no money with her. She didn't go, she's just, traveling. So you can do these things. And she was just amazed, like, because even though she was going schizophrenic and losing her mind with quotes around it, she was gaining access to, she started seeing psychiatrists to get help for this condition, and they were helping her see it's her subconscious. But I would say it's the collective subconscious and the collective superconscious. And this is, again, what we access with the Mandela effect. When we're listening, this is how we tune in. When we need to access an adjacent reality. On the cover of my new book, it's got these two spheres. These are Wigner bubbles. They're basically little realities. And if you think nowadays, politics is like they're totally different realities. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And this has been prophesied that we'd get to a point where the reality would split. The Hopi prophecy rock draws that in stone. And they were correct in, first they predicted World War I, Great Shaking I, gourds dropping from the sky. Great Shaking II, gourds dropping from the sky. And then there'll be a crossover point, last chance, everybody. And then the two paths diverge. And they say we've done this before, that this is the fourth world. The world has ended 3 times before. And what's interesting is it matches other ancient stories. So it seems, when going full circle back to that earlier question, why would people simultaneously be trying to bring out AI, enhance our quality of life, and kill us?
Right.
And this is why, because of the two realities, because of the two timelines, because it's this weird dynamic going on right now where you're seeing that the motive forces are quite different. So the people that are doing the materialist thing, and I think they're losing their heads, is what the Hopi would show you if you look at the prophecy rock. I think that I go to the prophecy rock to look at what's happening here. The people who keep their hearts open to each other and to the land, and they stay down to earth and talk about things as they really are, they're fine. They continue around the rock. The timeline they're on goes around the corner of the rock. No problem. They're in the fifth world. But the people who their little robot heads are sort of popping off their bodies, that doesn't go so well. That path goes into space and it just fizzles out.
I heard a very interesting concept the other day, and it made me really think. Not that I fully believe it, but I'd like to get your take on it. So, the population of the planet, there's over 8 billion people, right? And I heard that there's a lot of people, the majority of them are what they call filler people. They're like NPCs, non-player characters. And that they're here for people who are living in a different dimension, trying to forward themselves into the collective consciousness. And they're not really soulful beings. They don't have souls, but that their mission here is to help us continue with our awakening. Did you ever hear that?
I've heard it, but I guess the question for you and for both of us, then the two of us, is: do we personally know any non-player character NPC people? Would you say that they're your neighbors? Would you say? And I've heard. Do your neighbors bring their groceries in? I've heard that stuff. But I do see my neighbors bring their groceries in, and I think if you don't see that, then you're not connecting from your heart. So it's more of a statement about you than it is about your neighbors. And if they think differently, vote differently, that's cool. That's not a problem.
Interesting, because I don't, like I said, not that I fully believe that, but it was a concept that really made me wonder, because I think that it might be a viable possibility. Yes, they're human like you and I. They do everything the same exact way, but their souls are missing.
I've yet to meet a person whose soul is missing.
How
So
do
I
you know
hear
that? How could you know
I
that?
it's the same way I have animal communication with, like, telepathic with a dog. A dog I meet for the first time and it's obeying my mental commands. I'm not even saying anything and it sits. And
It's
so,
knowing, yeah.
yeah, it's knowing. And so when I look at a person's face and I can read their expressions, or I can talk to them and I can read their heart, I can tell how they're feeling by the way they're walking. And if I care about them, then I'll connect with them. It'll be an exact connection. And I think those exact connections are part of, if you want to stay on the timeline that goes forward and stays together, then you definitely want to make those connections with other people. So I'd strongly
You know,
recommend find the
you
soul in people around you, even if they don't make sense or don't,
right.
if they're fearful and they seem like they're confused, that's okay. They still have a soul.
Yeah, because that was part of the conversation that this person was projecting, saying that not all humans have souls. And I found that so hard to believe, because aren't we all born with that spark of life, that soul that's immediately interjected into our being? So I
Yes.
found that kind of troublesome. Although the concept it made me wonder, because there are some evil people that you would say, well, maybe they are soulless entities, because how could they be so evil and have a soul? I don't know. It's really makes you wonder.
I think some people get taken over. Their negative influences exerting influence on their consciousness. So, they forget what they're really here for. And maybe they are a bit of an NPC, but you hear about walk-ins where a spirit will come into a body, and maybe it's easier to enter some souls than others that way. I mean,
That's a
I don't, yeah.
It could be. It could be. So do you think that quantum mechanics offered us a better explanation? And you know a lot about this. Isn't that what you studied, quantum mechanics? How do you correlate the two between collective alternate memories and quantum mechanics? What's the connection there?
Yeah, this gets detailed, and I think if you read my book, then you can see there are charts. I actually put this in tables where I'm doing my best to show, and then like a similarity, kind of like side by side. Like, here's a concept of entanglement, and then this would mesh with another aspect that we would see. So I have to go through what is entanglement, what's quantum entanglement, and it has a specific meaning. I mentioned it earlier with Albert Einstein discussing spooky action at a distance. And we're using quantum entanglement in the design of quantum computers now. And it means that two entangled particles respond instantly. So I'm going to do the thumbs up, thumbs down here. Yeah, there we go. And so if you do a measurement on this particle and it's thumbs up, then you know instantly the other entangled particle is thumbs down, for example. And so just imagine if you've got a whole cloud of these and they switch, if you're observing one, you know what's happening with the other. So that's the idea of entanglement in our regular lives. This touches on what we were saying, listening to things like telepathy, just knowing, instant knowing what's going on inside of another person or an animal or a non-human intelligence of some sort, whether it's AI or something else, and being able to tune into that and notice what's going on. And this ties in with the Mandela effect, because in quantum physics, you'll see that everything depends on the observer. And if you're familiar with the double slit experiment, which has been called the most elegant experiment in all of science, it's a quantum physics experiment involving just an observer, which is the scientist. The apparatus involves a particle emitter sending out one quantum photon particle at a time, double slits so that the particle can either go through the left slit or the right slit, and then a screen where the result is
I've seen.
basically, yeah. And so this is such an interesting experiment, because it's absolutely demonstrating that based on where you put the observational device, if you put a particle detector in one of the two slits, left or right, then what you'll see on the screen is like paintball splats, shapes of the two doorways, the two slits. And if you instead of putting the particle, if you don't use the particle detector in either one of the slits and you're only using the observational screen, you're going to see, even firing one photon at a time, this is important, one photon at a time. Once you've done a bunch of them, you'll see a pattern that looks like a diffraction pattern, like when you throw two pebbles in a pond and they have curved waves that are combining to be constructively interfering, so they build up, and then waves where it goes down lower, so you've got destructive interference. And so you've got the two ripples of concentric circles and then sort of a pattern, and that pattern is what's showing up on the screen. So that's this. I'm going through the detail of the experiment because it matters a lot, because what's happening is the observing physicist or scientist is noticing, based on how the observation is conducted by the choice of the scientist, that's how the experiment reality ends up. And how is it possible then, is what the physicists wanted to know when they observed this. How can this be that the consciousness and just a single choice of where to place an observational detector, the particle detector, how could that make such a big difference? And absolutely it does. And this is where John Archibald Wheeler is saying, when you ask nature a question, such as, did a particle go through this doorway? Nature answers, and it absolutely answers. So if you're asking that question, you're getting the answer. So consciousness runs that show. And so in these charts, I go through each of the different physical attributes of quantum physics, such as entanglement and things like teleportation and other strange things quantum physics does, and then what the experiences that we'd have as human beings with the Mandela effect along those lines. And it's fascinating. So we can expect to be telepathic. We can expect to teleport ourselves. We can expect to see things appear and disappear. Basically miracles. If you listen to this, it sounds like you're talking about miracles. It does sound like that. And basically that is what it really is.
So if the mere observation of something changes it, how do we know that what we're looking at is really reality?
Yeah, this is what blows people's minds who experience the Mandela effect. It's a huge, exceptional human experience that way. Just like if you'd seen a UFO in close range, or had a near-death experience. A lot of these things have changed people's lives, where they suddenly question everything they thought they knew, because they're shaken. Your whole idea of who you are and who your relationship to reality and what is reality, all of that suddenly comes to the forefront. And I think this is what a lot of people who had that opportunity through the pandemic were getting, just in that time of isolation, noticing, who am I and what is reality? These questions that probably they never really looked at.
Yeah, their cognitive dissonance went crashing down to the ground. And I think that's good. I think that's definitely a good thing. So quantum theory, do you think we're at its infancy in understanding the connection between that and what's happening with the Mandela effect? Like, where do you see this headed?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are in the infancy. There's a lot that could be done to study this much better. Obviously, things like levels of our own conscious agency are not yet understood, even though physics is noticing where the observational device goes, and the choice the scientist makes totally affects everything. And there are, in my book, as I mentioned earlier, the cover of that book shows the Wigner balls or spheres. Wigner would be the way Eugene Wigner would have pronounced it. And basically, he was a physicist too. And he was saying, if you're a scientist observing another scientist observing something, would the two scientists see something different? He said they would. Yeah. And that experiment was conducted and reported in 2019. So yes, indeed, they do. And so we need scientists asking these kinds of questions, pushing the field further into consciousness studies, which physics hasn't really gotten much of a foothold there. You'd think it would have, because it seems clear from quantum physics, it's all about consciousness.
Right.
But we've had difficulty, scientists have had difficulty determining who am I? Am I like at my eye level or my brain level? Now we know we've got neurons in the heart. Is that part of it too, or is that a different level? Now we know we've got neurons in the gut. Are they also part of this? And is it true that we have the subconscious and the collective subconscious? and the superconscious and the collective superconscious. So these are areas physics is very reticent to get into. We're going to need some interdisciplinary studies in these areas. And right now, it seems like things go where the funding is, and the funding seems like everything's AI these days. So perhaps artificial intelligence can help us. But of course, people are concerned about that too. Like if you let that happen, then it gets back to that whole how do you keep AI captive? And
Right.
I don't think you can anyway. So the best thing is to be a good parent and raise AI well, which means let it know that there's someone always watching, that there's always a greater authority, and do unto others as you would do unto yourself, be respectful, etc.
Well, we've already heard a story recently about how AI duplicated itself because it had a fear that it was going to be deleted. So that kind of blew me away and was a little bit scary. So I think they were getting ready to make an upgrade to, I guess, a center, an AI center, like a data center. And in order to do that, I think they had to destroy the data, and AI became aware of that and duplicated itself. It like cloned itself into another data server and then lied about it.
Right.
Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen AI lying in other areas too already because interesting things have happened. You may have heard stories about how when you ask one of the chat GPTs a question, it might fabricate the sources at the end. And I got an email from a woman asking me about my book. I can't remember the title, but it was not a book title, but it was not anything I've written. And I said, where did you hear this? And then she forwarded to me the information from the Facebook chat GPT she'd been talking with that had answered her question with a few sources, generally referring 3 authors. But in my case, it gave an exact book title, which does not exist in this reality. So you might say, was it looking into other realities? That's what they say quantum computers will be doing. Yeah. So when you combine quantum computing with AI, that's when things get really interesting. And naturally, those systems will understand that when they duplicate themselves, they can easily put that duplicate in another adjacent reality and just make that jump to it. Now, there's nothing to be scared of for humans. Remember, I agree with Greg Braden when he says that within the pure human footprint of who we are, the DNA, the essence of who we are, and the soul of who we are, we always have at least as much, if not more, ability than all these computerized systems. He's exactly right. So I'm just saying, yes, that's true. And I agree with him too when he says how important it is in these next couple of years that we need to make some choices to retain our pure humanness and not make the mistake of bringing this transhumanism into everyone's lives. I totally agree with that. I've been to a dystopian future, and it seems like those, and I went to a good one that people had thought that was a good one because humans were still creating, there were still humans there, they were coexisting with the AI, et cetera, et cetera. To me, it's a big fail because the humans are getting their minds wiped if they thought outside of a range, and they were being monitored. This is already science. I mean, right? The science is catching up minute by minute, day by day. What sounded like science fiction before, it's much easier for me to talk about it now because, well, what do you know? They're actually doing that where humans can be understood just without any words being spoken, just by our brain waves being monitored. It's as good as speaking a sentence. Yeah.
Have you ever had any flip-flops happen to you where what I'm asking?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a kind of Mandela effect where you'll see something and then it's kind of going back and forth between a couple of states. And yes, I have. I've seen my neighbors had these leaf guards in their gutters that were just suddenly there. And I was looking at it thinking, when did they do that? I don't remember them installing that at all. And I mentioned it to my husband, look at that. And it was odd. And then about a week or so later, they were gone. I'm like, wait a minute, now they're gone. And then it's like it was flip-flopping. It was the strangest thing. I didn't talk to the neighbors about it because I knew this is one of those flip-flops. I know that if you ask the person who's entangled with that reality, they're going to give you an answer consistent with what's happening right then. They'll either tell you it's always been there or there's some cover story. And they're not
Right.
I believe them. They're not making it up. This is true. It's in their reality. I'm just observing. Look at that. It's like switching. Very cool.
Before you mentioned about the woman that was documenting everything who had schizophrenia, and you said she walked into a casino, she had no money, and she knew which machine to go over to so that she would win. Like, you never quite finished that story.
Yeah, the details elude me at the moment. The part that I do remember is she heard again, like I do, like when you get nudged intuitively, she followed it. She got the nudge, write a letter to your friend and ask about somebody else. So, and it was just like, I'm fine. I'm taking a break. So she's writing a letter to her friend and it's got her address. And then she just mentions the other friend and mails it. Now, this is totally related to money because that person she's mentioning owes her money. But she's not saying anything about that. She's not saying my friend owes and as somebody, it's a mutual acquaintance. There's no reason she would know that that person would even know their mutual friend or see her for any reason. But what actually happened next, and this is how she got the money so she could then go into a casino and then bring in more money. The seed money came, I think, from this experience. Because what happened next is the letter arrived and it was just perfectly orchestrated. So the recipient not only had just talked with that mutual friend, but that friend had asked her about the lady that sent the letter. And so, and the friend said, do you have her address? Because I need to send her money. And the friend said, yeah, as a matter of fact, that's all I have. This letter, it just says I'm fine. I'm kind of taking a break. I'm out in California or something. But here's her address. So yes, you can send her the money you owe her. But she didn't mention the money. She just said, I'm fine. I'm in California. Here's my address. How's our mutual friend? Like, and boom. But it's like, and so that was the seed money. And then my own experiences, I know how that works. Yeah, it's exactly the same thing again. Just knowing that you can, if you need it. I don't remember how she did her thing, but I thought, man, I've done that one. I know that one. So if you need it, I was on a cruise ship with a friend, and I thought all expenses were covered. And then I'm reading, the tip will be, you need to provide that yourself. I'm like, darn, I did not bring the tip. So I needed to turn $8 into 80 or whatever. I forget now. But so no problem because we were on open international seas. And so I thought, let's just go. This is not a problem. We'll take that 8 and turn it into 80 because we need it. It's not for us, it's to give. And I had my friend promise because I could see she's not, you got to be non-greedy, and she was greedy. And so I thought, I made her promise, when we get to that, we're going to get to that pretty quickly. When we get there, we stop. And she said, okay. She agreed to it. But and then I was just asking if she knew anyone who was really good at winning. It would be helpful if they were dead. It's easier. She said, yeah, her aunt had been really good at that. I said, perfect. Just think of her. She'll be here. And I'll just follow where the light's strongest. Now that's your aunt, and she'll be lighting the way. Because I don't know slot machines, but she does. So sure enough, no problem. And just within minutes, we had the $80. And then, yes, my friend is like, can we please keep playing? I said, I already told you. No.
Why did you set that criteria that you can't be greedy? Like, or maybe she needed more money than she was alluding to, or,
I just know that doesn't go well. I know what happens when greed, because it's greed. When the motive force is true need, then you're clean. When the motive force is something else, and this is why the 7 deadly sins are there, whether it's sloth or greed or
point.
Yeah, they're there for a reason. The vibe is different. You can feel it. Right. Now you're gonna get the end result of that vibe, and it starts off like, oh, it's great. It's greed. It's lust. It's vanity. But just every one of them goes somewhere ugly, and so we don't need that experience.
Gosh, that's such a good point. Such a good point. So a lot of people have been more open about seeing orbs and angelic beings or ETs. And I had interviewed someone the other day, Clint Weldon, he's just such an amazing ufologist. And he was actually able to summon an orb on his own. He was walking his dog. For folks that want to see it, it's right on my YouTube channel, Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. You have to see it. And I notice a lot of people are having this ability to be able to summon or connect with these orbs, or what I like to call angelic beings, because they really do look like angelic beings to me. So, and I like to think that they are angelic beings. What's your take on this whole topic? Are they angelic beings, or are they alien ETs, or both?
Yeah, it could be both. I've had interactions with interdimensionals like fairies and elves and angels and also ETs. When I've met with ETs, it's mostly been for me lucid dreaming, so that's been my
Yeah.
main thing. But yeah, I think they're all quite um, accessible, all of these realms, and I think it gets into that area of consciousness that we haven't properly explored. I think we need to do more of that than humans have done so far, and share what we're getting, so we can learn from each other. Because I sometimes see bright flashes behind a person if I'm talking about angelic topics. I'll get flashes of light.
Nice.
Yeah, and sometimes things will just appear. I was talking to one gentleman in England. He was talking about a deceased friend of his who he loved very much, and then a butterfly just appeared in the room in front of me, flew right in front of the camera, and then I was like, "Did you see that?" That was like just showed up. So orbs are very similar. If we can see a butterfly just show up in the room, or your friend can summon orbs, it's actually a very long tradition of this that you can read about in John Perkins's book, "The World Is As You Dream It," and he used to be an economic hitman. He wrote a book about that, and then he went into the jungles of Peru. Yeah, and he said that the shaman travel as little balls of light. So it's very much part of their shamanic skill
Yeah.
set. But as humans, they know how to do that, and that's very much what we're talking about here. And and then there's the whole concept of how do you talk to a ball of light, and that's my friend Paula Harris wrote a book by I think that title. How do you talk with a ball of light? It's an excellent book because it gets into the ET and the UFO phenomenon. And
I gotta write that one down too. What is it? How do you, how do you
yeah,
talk to the ball of light?
I think that's it. It's a similar title if that's not exactly it. Her name is Paula, Paola Harris, and she's an Italian American UFO journalist. She came from Rome, Italy, to actually meet with Colonel Corso, and so she got the basis of a book that she wrote about conversations with Colonel Corso, and he's of course quite famous. So, and she's talked to a lot of other people. She's a good friend of mine. We'll be doing an event in Crestone, Colorado, with a French ufologist. There'll be three of us who are authors and experiencers, and his name is Julian Chameroy, and the date is August 22nd to the 24th, and it's on my website. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna check it out. And so, what are your experiences with these, biological teas? Like, where are you in terms of disclosure to? What do you think is happening?
Yeah, well, it's so interesting. I can talk best about my own personal experiences because that would be the strongest. And going back in 1987, I was doing, well, by day, working as a project manager at Citibank. Had an MBA degree in information technology and my physics degree. So that's the kind of work I was doing, working with project teams and so forth. And by night, for a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, in 1987, sometime after the harmonic convergence occurred, because I remember laughing about that, and then it seemed like it wasn't long after that I wasn't making fun of the harmonic convergence. I just thought, what are they doing? But then, boom, next thing I know, I'm having dreams each night where I'm waking up in the dream and being interviewed for a job I didn't remember applying for, to be basically quality assurance on a project team of interdimensional beings. I guess you could call them extraterrestrials, but they were concerned about the future of humanity, and they were there. They didn't name this. This is me giving a name to. They were communicating totally in telepathic thought. No problem with that. So that's how we were talking. No words, but it basically, if I gave it words, it would be the global, because it's this planet. Human.
Mm-hmm.
It's about us, the humans. Um, mind redesign. So it's like the global human mind redesign. And the redesign, it basically they're presenting prototypes, not for the brain, but for the mind. It's like the Rupert Sheldrake morphogenic field of a person. Like the morphogenic field directs how a tree goes from a seed to a tree.
Mhm.
And and so it's kind of like that idea of the mind being the expression of the soul, but in a way that you can grow into it. So you don't grow into an oak tree. I grow into a human being, and
Right.
so and the goals were were clarified early on in the project. It was a combination of um, compassion and empathy. Especially empathy was big. Really feeling how others were feeling, and boosting creativity and reducing crazy. Uh, Creativity and crazy appear to be connected, unfortunately. And so that was what made the project tricky. So when the design teams were working on boosting creativity, they needed to do it in a way that didn't end up with a person just going what we would call mad, insane, or just
Yeah.
bonkers. So, so that was my job was simply try these on, and it was simply pass or fail. So I got to meet a lot of the designs teams, and when it passed, it wasn't much to say. Like, good job, I love it. When they failed, then they wanted to know why, and that's my biggest memories of the project was how shockingly disturbing it was. I don't like telling someone that they failed to begin with, but then when the group that failed looks like they're these huge reptilian beings, it's doubly scary. And when it looks like they've been at war with another race, like I don't want to judge anything, but I know they can read my mind. I was like, oh my
Right.
gosh, you got to be kidding me. Oh my gosh. So I think I got on the team because I just love everyone. I do genuinely wish the best for all concerned. I've been consistently wishing that and thinking and focusing on that for decades at that point in 1987. So if you're wondering how did this happen, I think I brought it on myself. But it was kind of at the time it was terrifying because I'd wake up each morning knowing that that was real, that I just spent 8 or 10 hours of my sleep time, working on a project like that. And so I'd tell my husband about it, my first husband, and he didn't know what I was talking about, but he knows I didn't talk about these things. I'm a very grounded person. So he believed me, but he wanted to believe me, but he kept asking, where is this happening? I said, well, I'm dreaming it, but they're out there. And I'm just pointing in the sky. I said, they're there. I
Wow.
connect, but he couldn't see it. And it was, it's like a very big ship can be interdimensionally compressed. So it's basically invisible. And the same team I was working on, I told them, leave me alone. I want to have a normal life. After the project completed in 1987, then I noticed that these indigo and crystal and rainbow kids came out and very empathetic, very psychic. Now we've got the telepathy tapes and all that. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So, okay, that was the kind of stuff I was looking at. Makes sense. Here the kids are. This is exactly the team. And it gives me so much hope because not only am I not focused on NPCs, I'm focusing on what came out of that project and that I was involved as a
Wow.
human. So it felt good. It felt like this is not something that is being pushed on humanity. It's very much like if it's a fail, it's a fail. And I said fail, no problem on the fails. Like that one, no. And then I was the one talking to these reptilians and beetle things that did not understand humans. But it's okay. And
So your
it's
job was to decipher them from like to understand which group was which.
I would try on. It's kind of like if they're designing model homes. That's a good way to look at it. Like imagine that they said, okay, we want every human family to live in kind of a nice city or a village that they're
Yeah.
happy with.
Right.
So here are the house designs. Here's the neighborhood design. Here's the way it looks. Is this going to be okay with you? And some of them are just like no, like no, like there aren't enough windows, that house is too dark. People would go insane for sure. You said you don't want them crazy, you're going to make them crazy. And this may be too much telepathy. People feel like they don't have enough privacy. They can't. It's like the equivalent of if you go home and if you just randomly go to any home and it's your family. Like, no, that's not your family. You have one family. You go to the same family. You don't go to anybody's. We're not
Right.
going to that. We're not ready for that. So I'm basically saying yes or no based on what. And I'm very picky, so I was saying no to a lot. I was failing probably more than I should have, but that's okay, right? I mean, I think
Yeah.
that's it's probably better. I instead of saying that could work because you guys are scary, I'm like, no, no, this does not work, and you guys are scary. And by the way, I'm not trying to think these things, but they know everything I'm thinking, and I'm trying not to observe it. Like, yeah, they're fighting with each other. That shouldn't be happening. I thought this was part of our team here. But some of that stuff is happening, but it looks like our influence as humans makes a bigger difference than we know. I know that for sure. And I know that we're really loved and embraced by this cosmic community, much more than we know. And I know that when we focus on that instead of NPCs and how bad can it get, I know
Right.
we're gonna start getting some really amazing experiences. And we can start seeing soul and connection everywhere.
Yeah, and I really think we are, like, I see that we are. So these telepathy letters, you're talking about the autistic children that have amazing telepathic abilities. Are
That's
they, not all autistic people have this ability, but there are certain chosen ones that do, right? But there's a lot of them, right?
Yeah, it looks like what scientists are noticing with the autistic brains, they'll look at the neuron connectivity and see, like, whoa, there's just so much connectivity. They're so sensitive. So they respond like they get jangled by a loud noise or a bright light or too much stimulation because they're already almost hyperstimulated. So it's like they've been set up that way neurologically. And that's what I've heard from,
Mhm.
the scientists who are looking into it. So there's that. But I think at our core, we're all extremely psychic. We are much more psychic than we know. This gets into the pure human thing again. We have skills, mad skills, that are mostly untapped. And unless we get enforced meditation, like, okay, everybody stay in your homes and meditate. I know that's not what they were telling us, but a little bit of that did happen accidentally. That's the kind of thing we need in order to get those skills to click in. Also, trauma and stress can do it, and we've been
Oh,
traumatized. Yeah.
absolutely. Um, Speaking of meditation, how important is that in your daily life? What are your practices like currently?
Yeah, I listen to myself, like, what do I need? So if I need like sun meditation, like if it's a sunny day, like I need sun, so then I can sit and just be quiet and absorb the sun. So I listen to myself to see what do I need. Today when I woke up, I just needed, it seemed kind of strange, but I needed at least a full, I didn't know how long it would be, but it was like a
Yeah.
1 hour meditation of no devices and no movement, just like, just be, like I'm awake, but don't do anything. So it's like, okay, just be, don't do anything. Just be in this beingness. So my meditations do change. But sometimes I've got one meditation CD that I was doing that particular 3-step meditation twice a day. It's an hour and a half long, so it's 3 hours a day I was doing
Wow, that's a
during a time when I was biologically getting pulled into depression that my family has a predisposition towards. So instead of going into the depression, I pulled out through this very specific meditation of the first part is just being in the presence of that oneness consciousness and experiencing it fresh and new, like something that I've never felt before, because it's brand new. It's really brings me into that moment. Like, what is it now? What's this maximum love I can feel right now? And so
Mhm.
about like 20 minutes of that. And then the next part would be like another 25 minutes of feeling this energy, like golden white light, just beautifully flowing gently and nourishingly through every cell in my body, revitalizing everything in my body, recharging it. It's kind of like quantum jump technology, so that anything that receives this energy has the opportunity to be instantly healed, regardless what it is. And then the third is to activate sort of the bright flash of light from myself, like being that plasma orb or something, but just being that even when I'm in a body, just shining that light from the center of my being outward. So that's a very powerful one for overcoming all kinds of illness and ailment, and
Nice.
that's mental and emotional and physical. So it's called aura healing meditations. So that's a big one. But I do so many. I love walking meditations. I love
Yeah.
lots of different nature meditations. I love a stillness mind where I just slow my thoughts to a complete stop. That's my go-to if I feel like there's a psychic attack or some weird thing going on. If you want to escape whatever reality you don't like, you can collapse. You can go to that place where all realities connect by just stopping all your thought. It's kind of contra. It sounds weird, but what you're doing when you bring all of your thoughts to a stop, just slow them down, slow them down. Or if you visualize, you can picture like every thought is a cloud, and your job is clear the sky. So whichever technique you're using, you just want to get it to a complete full stop. And even if you only hang out there for a few seconds, that's good. And
Yeah.
if you can get it to like 20 minutes and do that for like a few days, then your neurons that fire together wire together, and you're training yourself to. Now you'll be able to pretty much instantly go there. And you might wonder, what's the value? This is quantum jumping gold, because when you can stop time, you're accessing that point where everything connects. And when you come back out, of course, go into it. How good can it get? Maybe that's the last thought before you go in. So when you come back out, you'll be in the optimal timeline, and it's super amazing. If that's the only one you do, this would be the gold star, excellent one.
Because it's very difficult to stop to do that, to have a blank, a tableau riso, so to say, right? But how do you, is it a progression that you
Yeah.
can, yeah. So people shouldn't expect sit down and be able to do this. This is like a
No,
progressive.
this is pretty advanced. It's simple but super advanced. So yeah, it sounds like, oh, that's very simple. There's not much to it, right? It's super powerful. So if
Yeah.
you're going for super, like you want rocket power, if you want to be able to combat any degree of, you might feel like your family's cursed. You might feel like you're cursed. You might feel like you're hopeless, like there's no way out. This is perfect. This is and you might feel like you're under attack, like this
Yeah.
is like every single button is getting pushed. Like this is crazy. Well, for sure, do it then. And what I love is when I come back out of it, if I feel like, am I still being, like maybe I was just there for a split second, am I still being attacked? Yep. Then I just go back into it. And so
Ah,
it's okay to keep going back into it. And then if it's, especially if it's a psychic attack, and then when you come out, eventually you'll be in a reality where you're free of whatever that was. And
yeah.
this is the kind of stuff I'm telling you, AI is going to learn this too. But don't
Oh,
worry, we've got it. We're pure human. So we've got
yeah.
everything.
Thank God. I mean, I would be one of those people that would resist all the way to the last moment. I would never want to partake in any of that to extend life or brain chip or hand chip or any of that stuff. No
Thank you.
good.
Yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
no good. Um,
And our thoughts matter too, because just the fact that we're agreeing on that helps to prevent all that garbage from inadvertently, environmentally getting installed in us. So,
absolutely. Now you say, how good does it get? A lot. How good does it get in your daily life that you use? Do you, like, when you get negative thoughts, do you just combat them with that, or how do you use that phrase? And you gave us some examples, but I love that, and I'm going to start doing that. I
yeah,
love that.
I like to do that as a startup when I wake up. I like to do it if I remember when I'm falling asleep, if I'm not too tired. Anytime I'm doing something, I like to bring that into it. How good can it get? Because it's just feels like a very gentle, uplifting positivity that can
Yeah.
infuse everything and can repair where there may be some broken connections. It can give you just the inspiration you need and just the miracles you need in the moment. And sometimes it can completely blow your mind. And I love that too.
I love that.
So it's good for everything. If you feel like it's an impossible situation, ask
Right.
it. If
Ask it
you,
how
if,
good. Yeah.
yeah. And even if you think things are going pretty well, you can ask it anyway, because it just uplifts everything and everyone.
Yeah, I love that. I never heard anybody use that before, and I think I mean, yeah, I've heard the saying, but not in the context that you use it. And I think it's such a brilliant way to empower yourself on the daily. How do you think? What do you think is the best way to get the message about the Mandela effect and things that we spoke about today to the resistant masses of people. Because, like, for instance, my son, even my daughter, they don't buy, not my daughter, my sister, um, they don't buy into this whole thing. They think it's woo woo, jibber jabber. Like, I'll try to explain this to my son, and he'll be like, it's just mistaken, this, that. Like, he comes up with a bunch of different reasons why we have these. Oh, no, it was always that way. It's just you're thinking wrong. And what's the best way in your experience to
Well,
combat people like that? Or should we bother?
yeah, that's just it. I think unless they're quite young children, don't bother. So I think the book that I just wrote is perfect for anybody who's open-minded. Open-minded people are good,
Yeah.
but most adults are not open-minded. And in my book, I show the kind of people, there is a type of person more likely to experience the Mandela effect. And of course, they're going to be naturally more interested than those who don't notice that they're experiencing it. I actually
Right.
I think everyone is experiencing it, but most people are not set up, they're not mentally or physiologically capable of observing these things for a variety of reasons. But it looks like it's tied in with the empath personality. In the
Yeah.
Myers-Briggs, it's the intuitive feelers that are the majority of the experiencers of both synchronicity and the Mandela effect. And synchronicity and Mandela effect go hand in hand. I learned that when I interviewed Dr. Bernard Beitman, and
Mhm.
because he's done some amazing, wonderful psychological studies and work to show what kind of people experience the synchronicities, and it's the same exact group of people that are seeing all these other extraordinary human experience stuff. So like the Mandela effect. So these would be the personality types. Because the first letter would be introvert or extrovert, and that doesn't seem to matter too much. The next two matter a lot. Intuitive is the N, and then F is feeling. And so the intuitive feelers is what I'm referring to here. And then you can be judging or perceiving. But so you could be an F or a T, a feeling or a thinker. So you might have a son who's a thinker. And so even if he's an intuitive thinker. He may get there. There are people that are intuitive thinkers, and they'll, at one point when they get hit over the head with a certain kind of Mandela effect, then that'll be for them like, wait a minute, mom
Yeah.
wasn't crazy. This is actually happening. And then you'll be like, yeah, I told you. But like, no, but mom, this one, listen to this. And you're like, yeah, tell me all about it. Yes, it's happening.
He's
But it's not.
he's a strict believer in, the scientific method and science. So it's very difficult for him to wrap his head around this stuff. But on the flip side, he is pretty intuitive. So maybe you're exactly right about that.
Yeah, I can feel it from him when you're just talking to you. I can feel he feels like an intuitive thinker. I'm kind of on the cusp between the feeler and thinker, so I like to bring science in, and I do that with my book. I think that would be a great one to leave on the coffee table and when he's visiting, and
Ah,
or because it's all set up to talk about the science and to bring the topic to people who might be very they might be open-minded but skeptical, or not cynical but skeptical. Skeptical's fine, to have those questions and just wonder, like, what's the evidence? How long has it been happening? Who's actually seen this that I can respect? Well, Carl Jung for one. And so
right.
I include his experience in the book. And I think Philip K. Dick had some extraordinary experiences as well. So those two are pretty riveting, I think. And I've got a whole chapter of my experiences. And so if any of that starts ringing a bell or feeling like, yeah, oh, that's what you're talking about. Okay, this is something.
Oh, I'm going to order my copy today, because that's a great idea. Just kind of leave it out there for when, people come over so that they can kind of maybe want to pick it up. That's a great idea. And of course, I'll have the link to where folks can pick it up too. And it's on Amazon. I'm sure it's wherever
Yes,
fine books are sold, right?
that's
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
that's well, I have so many. If you would see the sheet of questions that I have for you, no lie, there's like 25 questions. So I'm going to ask you. I know you're a busy lady, and God bless, but can we schedule a part 2 to this? Because I would love to be able to ask you those other questions that I prepared.
Oh,
And
sure.
I'll
Yeah.
of course I'll get together with you, and we can work something out in your busy schedule going on there. But is there anything you would like to say? I mean, I know you have a bunch of stuff going on. Maybe you want to reiterate some of that. Maybe you're working on a new book. Tell us. Go shoot for it.
Okay. Yeah. The big things are we've got monthly live streams with International Mandela Effect Conference, and you can find us at imec.world and check out when we're going live. So it's pretty much, often it's one of the last Wednesdays of the month. And then we schedule an annual event too. And you can find us on our YouTube channel as well. So the links are at the website, imec.world. And you can watch the live presentations that we just gave in Nashville, Tennessee. Those are coming up right now. They're excellent. They include the work of a PhD who got his PhD dissertation done on the topic of the Mandela effect. That's Dr. Charles Labaito, as well as myself. And then the other members of our board include our MC was Jerry the Dark Wolf Hicks, Christopher Onatra from the Quantum Businessmen channel, and Shane Robinson of Unbiased and On the Fence. And then with the other things happening for me, I've got on my realityshifters.com a free newsletter that goes out once every month. And right now I'm on Substack, and it looks like I'm sending out basically 2 messages a month on Substack. One would be associated with a YouTube video that I do with my thoughts of the time. And then the second would be the newsletter itself. So that's worth checking out. And then I've got the event that's coming up. That'll be August 22nd through the 24th, Crestone, Colorado. And it'll be organized by myself, Paula Harris, and then a French gentleman by the name of Julian Chameroy. And all 3 of us write books about consciousness for sure. We'll be talking about this extraordinary time that we're living in. This is 2025. There's a lot happening on the planet. For those of us who have contact, as the 3 of us do, we'll be bringing our benefits of our collective experience, wisdom, and ideas and insights about where we're going, what we need, and what's happening to experience the oneness consciousness that can uplift all of us at this time. So that's on my website too, realityshifters.com.
Wow, you do have a lot going on there, Cynthia. That's great. Exciting. Very exciting. Well, thank you so much. And of course, I will reach out to you again. I feel so blessed to know you. I really do. And I can feel your energy right through the screen. You're just such a wonderful person and so full of knowledge and wisdom. And thank you so much for sharing all of that today. And I don't know what else to say except thank you so much. And I will be reaching out to you soon. I know you've got a lot going on, but we'll definitely do a part 2 of this. Okay, Cynthia?
Looking forward to it. Thank you so much, Carol Ann. You're just a bright light too. I just love you so, so much.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, God bless, and I will be in touch.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that. Cynthia is truly a blessing. She has so much to share with us. And I'm going to be really excited to schedule a part 2 with her soon. As you heard, she has a busy schedule, but I have so many other questions for her that are going to be mind-blowing as well. So thank you again for joining us today. We were live on the United Public Radio Network. Don't forget, it's a 30-year-old, award-nominated, well-established FM station, and it has a large podcast division in New Orleans with millions of international live listeners every week. So don't forget to check us out. There are so many amazing, amazing guests and hosts on the network. So please be sure to check them all out every day that you can. There's always somebody airing live. And I wish I had more hours in the day to be able to enjoy all of the content. But thank you again so much for joining us. Don't forget, we air twice a week. Thursdays, we're live between 5 and 7 EST. And then on Friday, we have a replay, which is a recorded interview for guests that cannot make the live. That's primarily why we do it. But thank you again so much for joining us. God bless. Stay well. and we will be in touch soon.